It's that time of the year again. We have Christmas and going on for a period of time, Haunakka. I've had a lot of questions sent in the past month or so, many of which I haven't been able to answer due to my schedule. But the question always is, can or do Luciferians celebrate Christmas or holidays like that? And I'd first like to say that Christmas as a holiday has, to me, since I was a child, had no connection with the legend of the manger Savior. It actually represents, to me, the birth of the Son, renewal, and also the descent into the darkness. But also, more importantly, on a reasonable everyday level, Christmas represents a time of gathering family and friends, especially if you have family that are religious and they don't share your beliefs. It's a good way to look at it's a family gathering thing and friends. So yes, Luciferians celebrate any holiday they want to. And Christmas, for years, I've always conducted a ritual working on the eve and the day to, for many years, Lucifer, then Shaitan, and Helios, Apollo, all the old gods, the ones who have that Promethean flame within that go against the sheep-herding god. But moving on, in this video I want to cover a step beyond, and I want to address Haunakka. I've had a lot of people ask me, Michael, in any way do you support Nazis or racism or anything like that? And I have to say that based on science, based on history, that one of the greatest jokes of all time, one of the greatest failures as an ideology that took people back to the core of idiotic Christianity were the Nazis, because they destroyed and attempted to destroy culture and to remove learning. They burnt books just because they were outside of their paradigm of what they were spewing forth to people. Racism is not a valid argument for me, because I've lived in a lot of different places around some different cultures, different types of people, and every single culture, from the ancient Near East to the modern world, has periods of time when the warrior spirit, the Luciferian spirit, comes flowing through them as a people, and they conquer and they strive for self-excellence and all those things. Now, more than anyone, even though their religion and their ideology is a slave mentality, which I despise, the Jews have been very resourceful in countering their enemies to where they're surrounded by nothing but enemies and different countries, and none of them can take Israel down. That is highly respectable. And I do not believe that because a type of person is born of this race, that they are not any way comparable to the next person. It depends on what you do with your life and the determination within. It's the pathos or the daemon, the inspiring drive. It has nothing to do with your race. So to be Luciferian, you can never even approach the ideology of National Socialism and all that. And besides, from Hitler down, no one is a complete Aryan. And you saw how quick the the Third Reich was destroyed. There's many great Luciferian aspects in many different cultures and countries. Antiochos IV Epiphanes Nikephoros. He was a Seleucid or Syrian king who is the center, or kind of the fountainhead for what became the Maccabee revolts. Now, I hear a lot of clamor about how, Haunakka is this and that and great, and I see it quite differently, and it's not because of a racial issue, it's because of a ideological and reason applied issue. First, I'd like to say that the Luciferian ideology is grounded and developed from the ancient Near East, the prior pantheons before the Hebrew religion and then the plague of Christianity. And it was really crowned, if you will, by the Hellenic Ruler Cult, which venerated the daemon. The king would be looked at as the symbol of potential self-excellence, what you achieve, what you want to achieve as a group. And in modern sense, Luciferians take that Hellenic ruler cult and Hellenic Greek deific mask concept and put it to the individual. So you're going to develop your daemon as the ancient Hellenic ruler cult operated in the ancient Near East. It's a very simple concept, and it's empowering and strengthening, and there's nothing that compares to it once you begin the path. I'm going to kind of explain some of the Maccabee type of things that occurred, which caused Antiochus IV to become the little horn and an essential antichrist to the Israelites, and then later on the Judeo-Christians. Baptists of all the ideological vermin in the world will howl about the book of Maccabees and how great Yahweh is and all these horrible anti-human things. But let's first start with Antiochus IV and his surroundings in the ancient Near East with the Jews. Antiochus IV, named Epiphanes, being the illuminated God manifest, relates to a title given to the ruler cult of that particular Hellenistic period. Epiphanes is not only Greek, representing the God manifest, but as the Greeks and the Macedonians went over and settled in the ancient Near East, Syria, Persia, etc., they found the natural synchronicity and the, I guess it would be the assimilation of various local cults where they were with the deific mass that they venerated and recognized. Epiphanes has part root in the Syrian milk cart, and Ashtar, the rebel, the morning star. The God manifest is the conquering one, the god Baal, who rises from the land of Mot, or death. Antiochus IV was originally named Mithridates, which his grandson was Mithridates Eupator Dionysus, the great king of Pontus, who slayed 80,000 Romans in a single day in Asia Minor. Antiochos IV gained the throne, and in the ancient Near East you had a considerable challenge, because you have Macedonian settlers, descendants of Macedonians, and various foreign mercenaries living in these lands. They've created a central harmony in their ruler cult. They suppressed any revolts and so forth. But the issue was, if you had a specific satrap who had ideas that were not in line with the ruler cult, that dissension would spread to other local states in the empires. So when you have that happen, then you see it's usually the priesthood, at least being the voice piece for it, and some general revolting against the ruling king, as we see in Bactria and other places. The significance of that in Luciferianism is that it's really all about your determined will and how you can accept differences in another individual and know when to conquer and overmaster your potential rival or enemy later on. Antiochos IV originally had no issue with Jerusalem or the religion. The big interest is, are they paying? Is there a cult in that area, the Hellenic culture, to keep up the, I guess, the uniformity of the empire in a certain way? There was actually a priest named Onias III, who was associated with a financial epistates or administrator named Simon. These guys had a conflict. Now this conflict grew. There were essentially two sides in Jerusalem of the temple of Yahweh. And they're all about, remember, with any religion, any temple, any cult, it's about money, power, control. It has nothing to do with some spiritual awe or amazing thing. It is all about those things. Now, what you take with those deific masks, those gods, and use, that's what gives it life. That's what makes it immortal. This specific priest, who was a Jew, wanted to gain the favor and gain the power over Jerusalem. So this particular rather intelligent priest went to Antioch and had a company with the king, Antiochus IV. He asked him, I can pay you a certain amount every year or every month, and I can bring in the Hellenic culture. We can build a gymnasium. We can bring in some Hellenic or Greek temples, in addition to eventually changing the Yahweh cult, the Jewish cult, into the Hellenic one. We'll also take the youth and slowly train them or educate them in the cultural differences of the Hellenic culture. Antiochus IV said, so you're going to pay this amount. That sounds great. Take off and do it. He went, and eventually there was an overthrow to where his fervent Hellenic culturalization of the Jews didn't go over well with the opposing priesthood, who still wanted the old Jewish ways and Yahweh to remain powerful. So over time they revolted. They looked at, keep in mind, if you look at the Maccabees, if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, they looked at Antiochus IV and the Macedonians, or Syrians, and Seleucids, among others, as the manifestations of Mastema, the adversary, or like with the Romans, Samael later on. And they took Apollo and all these gods and they demonized them because to these hardcore priests, the Yahweh cult was completely different in ideology from any other pantheon, in that it took out the human and the greatness of self, and it really venerated the slave mentality. That totally does not work with Hellenic or Greek gods and culture, because that's about achieving and rising to your challenge and overmastering things, being your own determined master, if you will. So, as these things occurred, Antiochus IV, to make a long story short, went to Egypt to add the Ptolemaic kingdom to his own. Now, all of the Diadochi, or the various Macedonian successors, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, were blood related, just as the Pontus, Mithridates, they're all related. So he had a great claim to the throne in Egypt, and he overtook most of it before the Romans thought that he was gaining too much power. Now, upon entering Memphis, Egypt, Antiochus received a message that Jerusalem, with the opposing priesthood, had revolted. And when you have that type of a revolt, they overthrow the and destroy the trappings of the Greek gods, and it creates a chaos in that region, and that will spread over time to where you have some of the outlining ones that'll do the same. So he rushed back and entered Jerusalem, and the Greek records indicate that he went to the temple and he says, "Hey, my dowry has not been paid. What my taxes, what's been owed to me?" So he went in and took the treasures from the Yahweh temple. Now, keep in mind, the concept of Yahweh as a slave god is that you don't venerate wealth. Well, these priests did venerate wealth, and that caused a major offense to their sheep herding god. And over a period of time, there was eventually, as Antiochus went off to the east in a great campaign, there was a revolt. Now, Antiochus and his generals did slay a lot of the revolting Jews. However, if they had stayed in line, they wouldn't have been killed. And eventually the Maccabees, who found that conquering aspect within themselves, probably from the Philistinian gods within the psyche from an earlier age, defeated the remnants of the Seleucid army that was there at that time. Why am I explaining this? Am I trying to give you a basic history lesson? No, I want you to understand that Luciferianism is all about understanding where things come from, where things emerge, and using those things to your advantage. One of the things, the pathos, or the great demonic drive that I have, is to establish the old gods in a new modern perspective that's relevant to us today, still with the balance of darkness and light. There will always be slave religions, such as Christianity, well, whatever it is, because there are always going to be slaves and sheep-like people. However, if we can bring the old gods back, the deific mask, in a new way, and utilize them in the Luciferian current, then you're going to achieve so much more out of your life, and really, with that knowledge, be able to stand up against any Christian or Baptist or whatever trying to attack your ideology. In December 167 BCE, before Common Era, the revolt of the anti-Hellenistic Jews who revered Yahweh had reacted so badly that Antiochus, being deeply offended that his subjects would behave in such a way when business people would come to him and the priesthood had decreed they would Hellenize their culture, this other faction of Yahweh priests caused such a storm of chaos in the region that Antiochus decided to be decisive and take care of the issue before it grows any larger. So, sending a couple of his generals and a force, they entered Jerusalem, and they removed all of the treasures from the temple again, as they weren't paying what they had agreed to, and the altar was changed and reconsecrated with a statue of Zeus Olympios. Now, Zeus Olympios, much like Zeus Kuranos, the thunderer, is essentially identical to Baal Hadad, the storm god of the Ugaritic and Canaanite pantheons. Zeus Olympios was the god upon the throne, the spirit of the skies, the one who inspires domestic peace through conquering your challenges, conquering your enemies, establishment of temporary order. Remember, Zeus Olympios was by nature a Luciferian, and the embodiment of that. In fact, the early Christians called his throne the, quote, throne of Satan in Pergamon and Ephesus in Asia Minor. Zeus Olympios, the statue was placed in the Temple of Jerusalem, and the Jews called it Abomination of Desolation. Because they slaughtered a pig. They offered a pig to Zeus Olympios in consecration of the temple, a common practice. Pigs are not a good thing to the Hebrew religion, so this was especially a manifestation of Mastema or Belial, the adversary. As this temple was dedicated to Zeus Olympios, the cult statue of the god, along with that of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, was placed in the temple, and it was decreed that his birthday was to be celebrated by monthly sacrifices. And sacrifices, keep in mind, incense, libations, offerings, treasures, and the odd animal here and there, which the priesthood would usually consume. And other Greek Hellenized cults such as Dionysus, who, Dionysus, if you look at Seleucus I, the founder of the Seleucid Empire, depicted his daemon, if you will, his conquering daemon, as part Seleucus Nicator, the victor, Alexander the Great, as predecessor, and Dionysus. It was kind of a combined, horned, conquering god who had a great force of horned, which must have appeared to the Jews as the demonic elephants, behemoths, that were part of their army. Dionysus was introduced to Jerusalem as well, and various other altars depending on that. The idea was, because they banned circumcision, they banned all of the Jewish practices, not because they're racist, but because they had challenged the sovereign rule and really went against the common acceptance of different types of belief. Now, with that said, if you're open to someone saying, oh, you can be Christian, you just need to respect what I do, and they attack your beliefs and call you evil, well, you have to deal with that one way or another. That was the way that Antiochus IV dealt with it. Now, the concept of Zeus Olympios is present in the modern Luciferian ideology, in that Zeus is identical to Baal Hadad or Adu or Bel Marduk, the conquering god who instilled order. Now keep in mind, Zeus has a very nasty side as well, a ruthless side, which I find particularly commendable, because he creates, and he's ruthless towards his enemies, something that today the slave mentality by Judeo-Christianity tells us that pride, feeling good about yourself, relying on yourself with your own spirituality, conquering your enemies and feeling good about it because you've defeated them, are all bad things. So humans are browbeaten from birth with the plague of Christianity and the Judeo-Christian influence. Haunakka is established from the rededication of their temple after the Seleucids, prior to the Romans, and Titus and his father, and so forth. So the Luciferian spirit, in every way, is inherently powerful in the Christmas season, because we have the ideology that we are good to our loved ones, we are good to our friends. We will help those at our discretion who attempt to help themselves. And as far as our enemies, we never turn our cheek. We strive to accomplish our demonic desires in this world and to achieve our goals, because this is the life that you have now. If you take Magic of the Ancient Gods, in the hardcover, page 45, you have an invocation of Zeus, Lord of Thunder and Lightning. It's a very generalized invocation of Zeus Olympios, or Nike Forest, one bearing Nike or victory. In offering, because I find this the most respectable thing. There are some traits associated with Antiochus IV from historical record and his deific portraits on his coinage that I find inherently and strongly influencing the image of the adversary that the Christians painted. In making kind of a gesture of thanks to Antiochus for resisting the early slave mentality, burn some incense in honor of the immortalized daemon god. He inspires us Luciferians who are aware of his influence even more now, because the culture was conquering. It was thinking before you act, and when you push yourself to the limits, you conquer whatever is in your way. That's good, and that is productive to humanity. You may use the Zeus invocation or the invocation to Phobios Apollo as well.